Hello everyone and welcome to the third tutorial I have ever made actually on Blender 3D. My name is Daniele and I'm a 3D artist. The project of today is an abstract animation of spheres and lines actually, lines. We start adding an icosphere. We can rename the object and the collection, and what we want is to make sure that this icosphere will be hidden in certain parts. So during the animation, parts of this icosphere, parts of the polygon will be hidden. We duplicate the icosphere and we add a modifier, a wireframe modifier to the duplication. We select the inner icosphere and we create a group we call mask. This group will act as guide to hide certain parts of the object during the animation. We add a vertex, weight, edit modifier. We select the vertex group as the one that we created, the mask, and then we set up the fall of type on custom, and we need to remember to invert the curve for this particular project. Then we add a mask texture. This mask's texture, I'm not able to speak today, will rotate, and rotating will tell our object which part of it are gonna be hidden and which are gonna be visible. The next thing that we need to add is a mask modifier. The vertex mask modifier is gonna be using the vertex weight we just defined with the black and white map. You can modify the map if you want in order to create sharper or softer effects. This is completely up to you. I would set the map on global because when you're gonna duplicate your object, if you set the map on global, the map is gonna be projected in a different way on each object. We then add a null object, in this case a sphere. You can add any kind of object. This sphere is gonna be linked to the map and will control the rotation of the map. Now we are gonna then control the rotation of the object itself using animation nodes. In this way we don't really need to animate it. It's gonna be self-animated depending on what we want. We then add a solidify, this to create a solid surface inside, and the solidify also allows us to define the texture that's gonna be put in the rim and in the inner side. We do exactly the same thing with the external shell, the wireframe shell. We define a vertex group, then we add a vertex weight edit. We invert the custom curve and we generate a map. In this case, clouds. You can actually use any kind of map, even a gradient if you want to fade it and make it appear. The only difference is that in this very case what we're gonna do is showing part of this wireframe depending on the map. So the lines will become thinner until they will disappear, while in the other case we will mask certain part of the shape. You will have to play a little bit with this feature. The other thing that you need to consider is that depending on how dark or how bright certain areas will be, this shape is gonna be visible or invisible. Just play with it. Another thing that you can do is increase or decrease the thickness of the lines. So in the thicker part the lines will be very visible, and in the thinner lines the lines will be completely invisible. You can also try different effects like subdivision surfaces to make it like I don't know, there was a toy when I was little that was like a plastic bowl with holes and it was filled with water. Yeah, you can create those kind of effects anyway. I tend to rotate a lot my object because I want to see from all the directions and make sure that it works. Next, we set up the animation nodes. In this case, we take an object in the animation nodes. Remember to create a new node tree. We select the object, then we select the output and the output of the Z rotation, Z. I always have problems with Z or Z. In any case, we take a time info and we put into a combine Euler. And the other thing is that we need to select the time info and insert into the Z axis rotation, and then feed the rotation of the object transform output. What this does is taking the time and using the time as a degree of rotation. Usually this node uses radians, and in our case we want to use degrees because it works a little bit slower. You can actually use a math node in between to slow it down. You just need to multiply by 0 point something. I in the end decided to make it rotate on the 3 axis. It doesn't really change too much, it just adds a little bit more of randomness. Now you don't really need to worry about the animation of the map because the map is gonna be animated through the animation nodes. Now we work on the materials. We set up 3 materials for the inner sphere and 1 material for the outer sphere. The 3 materials will be fed into the inner sphere through the solidify effect. The solidify effect has a feature that allows you to select which map. Basically, it's an array. The top map is the number 0, the middle map is the number 1, and the last map, the one on the bottom, is the number 2, and then you can continue. So I'm gonna show you in a moment. What I'm gonna do is creating a color ramp in the first map. It's gonna be replicated in the second map anyway. And this color ramp will be divided into 3 colors with a constant offset. And I will add also an object info node, and I will feed the random socket. So in this way, every time that I duplicate this object, one of those 4 colors will be fed randomly. For a I don't know, lucky case, when you duplicate that node with the same colors, even if the materials are different, they're going to be fed in the same way. Inside, in the material that we're going to call bright material, we do exactly the same, but instead of using the principal BDSF material, we use an emission, usually number with strength 3 is enough. What you have to do next is duplicating all the object using Shift D. Each duplicate will be in a different color. Put some randomness. Originally I was thinking to use particle emitter to duplicate them, but see that there will be a camera that rotates around the object. I think that this is the best option. Next, you add an HDR map to lit your object. I usually put like a 0.1 strength. If you want to do this setup, the previous tutorial shows you how to use HDR maps. I'm gonna put the link at the end of this video so you can use it. Another thing that I did was putting a lamp on the top, and I colored the light. Now you can actually change the color of your object using the light, and one thing, Ivy is great to do that. So if you color your light and you put color light on a color object, it's gonna create a very nice shade that it's amazing if you consider it's a real-time render. Next, I added a camera, and I linked the camera to an object, to a null object that I called focus. The null object will control both where the camera is gonna point and the depth of field of our camera. The depth of field basically is gonna be focusing just on the central sphere. I also selected the camera and tracked the camera to the object. You just need to add a track to object constraint. You need to play a little bit with the axis that is gonna point, but I mean, I'm sure that you can understand. I can do another tutorial if you need help with that. The next thing that I wanted to do was adding a different background. Instead of the usual black, I am gonna use a noise texture connected to a color ramp, and yeah, follow my setup and you will create this kind of spacey background, purple. You can change the color. And the other thing that I wanted to do was adding some stars. Same technique but with white, and you need to pull the color ramp a lot. So again, the scale should go around 100, and then you can connect the two nodes with a mixed color node. After that, all you have to do is adjusting your spheres. What I did basically was following the camera and seeing that the camera is gonna point more or less always the same background. I moved the spheres up and down to make sure that they are included in the camera. And the next thing to do is adjusting a little bit the light and set up the render. Usually when I render with 200 samplings. I need the samplings a lot lower when I need to model, because I don't really need that. And all you have to do after is set up your render and render. Remember to activate all the features like ambient occlusion, bloom. In this case, bloom is really helpful. Screen space reflections, and in shadows I suggest to put a high bit depth. Today this tutorial is finished. As usual, if you have questions, if you have curiosities, if you have comments, write me. For now, all I have to do is say goodbye to you and see you to the next tutorials.